Hey, good morning, everybody. Shalom, Elaine and Stephanie. Okay, good morning, everybody. Shalom. Hi, Keith and Ron. Boker Tov, Ron as well. Okay, let's see if Facebook is working yet. Yep, it looks like it is. Marty's there. Today's Torah study. Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a nice Shabbos, a nice weekend. Good to see everybody. I know Florida is pretty much opening up today. May 18th is the big day, and soon, God willing, we'll do the same with our shul. So we'll be able to see everybody hopefully soon. We're getting close. Boker Tov, good morning. Okay. And Rob Berger, good morning. Deborah Goodman. I think I missed you last week, Deborah. The end of the week. I hope you're well. And we're getting ready to roll. Terry, there you are. Terry Brandt. Terry Zweig. I was wondering about you. I missed you last week. Just while we wait for everybody to join us, I'd like to start off with Hayom Yom. Today's message of the day. I'd like to also start off by saying that today's Torah study is dedicated by Keith Kleinick in honor of his son, Samuel Harris Kleinick, on the milestone of his graduation from Georgetown University, McDonough School of Business. Mazel tov to you, Keith. I know you're very, very proud of Samuel Harris. May he give you tremendous nachas. Also, today's Torah study is dedicated by Mickey and Cookie Gottlieb in honor of Mickey's upcoming 75th birthday celebration on Wednesday. And their grandson, Harrison, I believe it's Harrison, who's graduating from high school as well. So that's all happening. That's Mickey and Cookie, who's dedicated this week's Torah study. If you'd like to make your milestone, anniversary, yahrzeit, birthday, or special day connected with the mitzvah of Torah study, then please join us. Please dedicate a day of Torah or a week or a month of Torah. You can do that at jewishgardens.com/donate or by simply calling the office here at 561-624-2223. So good morning, l'chaim, everybody. Quarantine life. And let's study just a few minutes of Hayom Yom, of today's daily thought, before we start with our regular daily regimen. Okay, today is the 24th day of Iyar, I believe. It's a Hebrew date, the 24th of Iyar. And the Hayom Yom goes as follows. This Shabbos, we bless the new month. Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of the new month. It's actually going to be taking place on Sunday. Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday. So on the Shabbos, this Shabbos is when we bless the new month. On this Shabbos, it's a wonderful opportunity to say the entire book of Psalms. You know, Corey teaches the book of Psalms every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11:30 in our Zoom room, which is jewishgardens.com/Zoom. And everybody can join her for Torah study of the Tehillim. But we actually say the entire Tehillim in the early morning. It's a day of Farbrengen. The Rebbes have said that whoever says the entire book of Tehillim, or at least some Tehillim, on the Shabbos that blesses the new month, we do this every month, the Shabbos that blesses Rosh Chodesh. whoever does that is drawing down extraordinary blessings upon themselves, their children, and their grandchildren, both physical and spiritual blessings. It's certainly a good investment of your time to take a book of Psalms. This is the book of Tehillim, and you just read the whole book on Shabbos. There's 150 Psalms. So it's a really good book to read, and it's written by King David. Very profound meditations there. A lot of it we can't understand, but we try our best, and very, very spiritual experience. So it's a day of Farbrengen, and also at Shlishi, the third reading, the Torah reader says the brachot without being called to the Torah. This Shabbos would have been the blessing when the Torah portion when we read the curses in the Torah, and therefore you don't honor anybody with that aliyah. You just have the Torah reader go up and assume the Torah reading. And you also say Avarachamim, which is a special prayer that is normally not said on a Shabbos that blesses the new month, because it commemorates it speaks about the destruction, the death of the Jews at the hands of the enemies. But since so many Jews were massacred on the Shabbos that blesses this new month of Sivan in the years 1648 and 1649, what was called the Bogdan Khmelnytsky massacres, the Cossacks, basically. The Cossacks killed so many Jews around this time that we till this day, 400 and something years later, we still remember the suffering, and we say this prayer about God taking revenge on those who destroyed us, who persecuted us, and massacred us on this Shabbos when so many of our people died. Okay, today's Hayom Yom begins as follows. It is a quote from the parsha which we actually read last Shabbos. If you go in my statutes. If you go in my statutes, I will give you rain in their time. Our sages interpret the word if as a plea, in the sense of if only you will go in my statutes. Like God is really asking us nicely. God's pleading, as it were, with Israel to keep the Torah in itself aids man and gives him the ability to remain steadfast in his choice of the good. Moreover, you go in my statutes, the soul then becomes a mahalach, it progresses. God is begging us, please, I want you to do my mitzvahs. I want you to connect with me so that we can form a deep, intimate bond. The fact that God is asking us to do this, he's actually begging us to go in his ways. That itself is what gives us the strength, endows us with the abilities to do so, and to do so with alacrity to the point that we become walkers. We really start to progress. With the advent of Mashiach, when Mashiach will come, there will be revealed the superior quality of the traits of simplicity and wholeheartedness found in the divine service of simple folk who daven and recite Tehillim with simple sincerity. Today, we think life is all about being sophisticated and advanced. But when Mashiach will come, we'll realize the beauty and the tremendous quality, the superior quality of those who did what they needed to do with sincerity, whether it was reading the davening, reading the Tehillim, even if you don't properly understand exactly what's going on, as long as you're serving God with wholeheartedness, with simplicity, that is going to be revealed as the most extraordinary level of greatness. Okay. And with that introduction, I think that we are ready. I'd like to welcome all the newcomers. Dean is walking and listening, and Stacy, good morning, and on YouTube as well. And on Facebook, I'd like to welcome Helen and Warren from Virginia. Mickey's here. Mickey Boker Tov Rab. Wow, Mickey's writing to me in Hebrew, Mickey. This is amazing. I love it. Mickey's celebrating his 75th birthday. He's dedicated today's Torah study. This week's Torah study in honor of his birthday on Wednesday, and in honor of grandson's Harrison's graduation, together with Keith Klein's son, who's graduating. That's today's Torah study. Is dedicated in their honor. And of course, welcome to Chana and Andy Siegelstein. Okay, so right now, folks, I'm going to switch over to our daily regimen of Torah study. Right now, I'm going to switch over to our gates of trust, which we're doing on an expedited level. We're moving it quickly forward because we're moving into a whole new terrain. Today, we're going to touch into a new topic. It's actually not just touching. We're going to go quite detailed into a new topic that we don't really get to hear so much. It's about the world to come. Where we go from here. Why is it that the Torah really speaks so little about the rewards of the world to come? It's an interesting question, because if what we do for the sake of the reward, then it would be a little strange why the Torah doesn't tell us any details about the world to come. It's very strange. Why would the Torah not tell us the promises of the world to come? It seems that the Torah only seems to tell us promises of life in this world. Like in this week's Torah portion that we just read in the Hayom Yom, it says, if you will walk in my statutes and I'll give you rain in their times, there will be peace in the land. And if you don't, then you're going to get all sorts of curses in this world. It seems that the Torah is only talking in this world. And you can almost understand why it is that some Reform rabbis, I guess, would say that the Torah does not believe in the afterlife. Because it's certainly not explicit in the written Torah. It is all over the oral Torah, but it's certainly not explicit in the written Torah. So what is going on over here? That's what we're going to be talking about in just a moment. Where I am starting today is we are in the middle of the seven needs that a person turns to God for. Just to quickly summarize them: health, wealth, and matters pertaining to people around you. We've discussed all of those in great length. There was mitzvahs pertaining to yourself, duties of the heart. We've spoken about that too. And today where we're starting off is mitzvahs, it's number 5, mitzvahs pertaining to involving other people. And then we're going to jump into 6 and 7, which is the reward in the world to come. And the bonus, the reward of your actions in the world to come. And then the extra reward, which is in store for us in the world to come. So we're going to go through those today. We're going to start with 5, which is the mitzvahs relating to other people. Then we're going to jump into the reward in the world to come. So when we look at the, what page are we on right now? In the book, in the book over here, I'm moving very quickly in here. So we're covering a lot of ground. Here it is. Okay, we're on page 433 is where I'm starting in the Gates of Trust today. So when we look at the 5th group, the external duties that affect others as well for benefit or for harm, such as the practice of charity, giving of tithes. And by the way, giving of tithes is a Jewish concept. They got it from us and not vice versa. Remember, Christianity is only 2,000 years old. Islam is 1,500 years old. The Torah was written 3,332 years ago, which speaks about tithing. So certainly they got it from us. Warning against evil, returning deposits, keeping a secret, speaking well of others, doing favors, honoring parents. All of these mitzvahs involve other people. Leading the wicked back to God, showing people the way that is right for them, pitying the poor, treating them with mercy, patiently bearing people's scorn when urging them to God's service, encouraging them to do what is right, by holding out to them the hope of reward and deterring them from wrong through fear of or punishment. What the Rabbeinu Bachai is going to tell us today is that we have to remember that we're just a conduit for the blessing of God. The proper way of relying on God in this regard is to keep the thought of all these and of similar activities in one's heart, to resolve to do them and pursue them in accordance with his duty to exercise free choice. Right? His sole aim should be to draw near to God, not to make a name or win honor for himself. So it shouldn't be that you're helping other people for your own sake, but you're doing that as an emissary for God. Then, having done his utmost, he should put his trust in God, that he will be able to accomplish what he had intended to do in accordance with his will. So there's 2 manners in which you have to have your trust here. Number 1 is with regards, when you realize that what you're doing is for the sake of God, then it's not for yourself aggrandizement, number 1. Number 2, you know that you're not ever truly capable of guaranteeing the result. Therefore, you have to trust in God that he'll bless the work of your actions. Okay? Just to wrap up this idea, when the Creator brings about a good deed through his agency, he should consider it a favor to himself from the Creator. May he be exalted. That God did a kindness with you to allow you to be the agent of good. He should neither rejoice when people praise him for it, nor desire that they honor him for it, because this would make him proud of his actions. It would be all about me, and it's really not about you. You're just the agent. His heart's devotion and purity of intention would be spoiled. The deed would be ruined, and its reward lost. I will elaborate on this later in the appropriate gates with God's help. Now remember, the duties of the heart is divided into various gates. We're studying the gate of trust. There are other gates that he goes through, which we're not really going through in this semester. So just let it be known that there are other gates in duties of the heart in which he does address these very interesting matters. Remember, folks, we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. If you'd like to interject with a comment here on YouTube or Facebook, we always love to hear from you. Welcome to Susan on YouTube, and to Rochelle Saunders, to Daniel Geiker, Adrian Hennigman. Good morning, Rabbi. I fed a small village in the Philippines today. I am not surprised, Daniel. I know that you're always helping people. Anybody needs assistance with paycheck protection program, please call Daniel. He's tremendous, very, very well connected in this regard. I'd like to welcome Sarah and Adrian and Daniel. Oh, he actually sent me pictures. I'm looking forward to seeing them. And to Mark Gottlieb, thank you. Good to have you with us. I hope you'll enjoy today's Torah study. Okay, good. So now we're going straight into the next world, which is this big topic that we rarely talk about. It's the number 6 and 7 of the 7 items for which we need to turn to God. We don't talk about it so much because, we're so busy worrying about our money and our health and our politics. We don't really have time, clarity of headspace to be able to get to worrying about where we go after this world. It takes a tremendous amount of wealth and resources to have the clarity of mind to be able to think so far ahead that you're wondering what's going to be in the next world. Like, in Pesach, we have the Afikoman. Why do we have an Afikoman? Because the poor people, all that they were worried about was the slaves, in Egypt. They were worried about tomorrow. So they would save the food for tomorrow, right? That's why they would hide a little broken piece of bread. And that's how we remember that we were slaves in Egypt, by having an Afikoman. Because all he can really worry about is tomorrow. He's got so many problems on his head, he can only worry about the next 24 hours. It's somebody who's rich, like us, right? Somebody who's living a privileged life that has the ability to worry about where do I go after this world. By the way, remember that the Afikoman is itself another manifestation of the doctrine of trust, because when the Jews were in the desert, they were eating the manna that fell down from heaven, and they were not allowed to leave it overnight. As much as they wanted to leave it overnight in order to give them a sense of financial security that would allow them to sleep better at night, they were not allowed to do that, because they had to go to sleep at night permeated with saturated with the trust that tomorrow morning God will provide for me all over again. And that was the birth of our nation. That was the education of our nation, that through 40 years in the desert, every single night we went to sleep with 0 resources. We had finished eating. The pantries were bare, going to sleep empty in the desert, so that the next morning we'd be renewed with trust that God has provided for all of our needs. So let's go straight into the 6th need of a person, which is our reliance on God for the world to come. And let's talk about the world to come in Jewish philosophy. Now, let us take up the 6th group, the reward in this world and the next that a person merits by his good deeds in this world. This takes 2 forms. The reward in this world alone, which we just spoke about earlier, and the reward in the next world alone. Sometimes a person merits both on account of a single deed. This matter was not explained to us in detail. Rather, the Creator promised his people general reward for general observance. That's what we kind of get in the Torah. For example, it says that for honoring your parents and for chasing away the mother bird, which is a special mitzvah that you're not allowed to take the eggs of a mother bird unless you chase her away first. For the mitzvah of honoring your parents and the mitzvah of chasing away the mother bird, you will live a long life. That's what the Torah says, v'harachta yamim, right? Now, the Talmud tells us a story in Tractate Kiddushin of a rabbi. His name was Elisha ben Avuya, who saw a father command his son to climb a ladder and chase away a mother bird to take away the eggs. So the boy dutifully fulfilled the command of his father, thus fulfilling not 1 but 2 mitzvahs, honoring his father, and number 2, chasing away the mother bird. While he's up there, he falls from the ladder and he dies. Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya was so shaken by this episode, where the explicit promise of the Torah was not true, the guy died, that he actually gave up his faith. It's one of the most radical stories in the Talmud. He gave up his faith and he became a heretic. At the end of his life, he repented, but whatever, it's a long story. And the commentaries explain that what that is referring to, and the mistake that the rabbi was making, is not that it was necessarily a promise of reward in this world, a long life in this world. It could be a reward of long life in the world which is forever, which is the next world. And that was the mistake that he was not understanding. So the kid went straight to heaven, so to speak, as opposed to living a long life in this world. And that's how you see the reward of the world to come being hinted in the Torah, but certainly not explicit. We'll find, for example, the Torah says, then Moses and the children of Israel will sing this song. This is when they cross the Red Sea, time of reward, of joy, of happiness. And that is many times explained in the oral law to be referring to the future, the coming of Mashiach, which is different, by the way, to heaven. From this world we die, we separate from our bodies, and we go to heaven, which is a spiritual world. But when Mashiach comes, our souls will be reunited with our bodies, and we will experience then resurrection in this world. And that is when it says that Moses and the Jewish people will sing the song. That is, they'll sing the song in this physical world. So there's a spiritual world called Gan Eden, the reward of heaven. And then there's Olam Haba, which is the next world. That's talking about the resurrection, where we will continue to live a physical life, reunited with our bodies through resurrection, a life where no longer will we struggle with any suffering, no evil, no harm, no illness, no death. Okay? So God gives us a very general reward for general observance, but does not get into the details. It did not state specific rewards for specific acts of service in this world, as he did in regard to punishment for transgression. Now, this is not really fair, because when it comes to punishment, they go into great detail. The Torah tells us in great detail all those punishments which are in store for us, where he states which acts make one liable to stoning, to burning, to decapitation or strangling, 40 lashes, death, premature death, payment of a monetary fine, twofold, fourfold, fivefold. So there's all sorts of punishments that face us when we do the wrong thing, which is why a lot of people, Bible critics, will think that God is a very vengeful God, right? But it doesn't really tell us about the eternal reward, payment for damages by an ox, a pit, whatever. But of reward and punishment in the next world, the prophet has told us nothing in his book for several reasons. Now, what we're going to go through now is a total of 7 reasons, which will explain to us why the reward of the world to come is not mentioned in the Torah. And when we go through these reasons, we'll be getting a lot of context as to what is the nature of the next world. That's what's so fascinating about studying the gates of trust, because it really gives us some context on matters that we don't really have other context on. Okay? The first of 7 reasons why we are not told explicitly in the Torah the reward of the world to come is because the material man cannot fathom the spiritual. We could not relate to the reward if the Torah was going to be explicit with us as to why or what we were going to be experiencing. Just a quick example of this. So, the prophets tell us about the coming of the Mashiach. So they tell us, let's say Prophet Isaiah says, we'll go to Israel on the wings of eagles. Now that sounds pretty fanciful. It sounds like somebody was smoking weed or something when they said that, wings of eagles. But now we realize, since the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, we realize that what Isaiah was probably talking about was Boeing 787 Dreamliners, which kind of look like eagles flying in the sky when you're 3,000 years ago, when you're trying to describe something to people 3,000 years ago. What else was he supposed to have said? Yeah, you'll be flying to Israel on airplanes. What? You'll be flying to Israel on El Al and JetBlue. They wouldn't have a clue what he's talking about. So he says, well, it sort of looks like an eagle. It's the best way I can describe it to you. And the way, there he was describing to us something which we couldn't possibly relate to for a couple thousand years. Many of the prophecies of the future time are like that. For example, when they tell us that the wolf shall lie with the lamb, does that mean that the nations of the world will be experiencing peace? Mortal enemies will learn to get along with each other? That's probably what it means. But we're not even clear, because we can't relate to that time. And if that's talking about a time of a physical reward, how much more so when it comes to a world of spiritual reality that we couldn't relate to? So at least when it comes to the world of Mashiach, which comes after Mashiach comes, right? After Mashiach comes, we're resurrected back into our bodies. And there we are living this physical life. If we couldn't relate to the physical rewards of that world and we needed metaphors, how much more so when it comes to the time between this life and the coming of the Mashiach, when we're waiting up in heaven in the spiritual world, souls only, certainly we have no idea how to relate to that. And that's the first of 7 reasons why the Torah doesn't tell us about the spiritual reward of that world. Right. Just like the breastplate with lights and sound that the priest wore that answered questions, that's today's iPhone. Exactly. So the high priest would wear a breastplate which had 12 stones on it. And whenever the people had a question, a very important question, like going to war or not going to war, they would ask the high priest, and the various stones would light up on his chest, and he'd read sort of this, like interpret the answer. So that it's difficult for us to understand what that was. Was that an iPad? Maybe it was an iPad. Who knows? I mean, it was like a thing with lighting numbers on it, So yeah, there's a lot of things that we couldn't relate to. By the way, there's actually a great story of a rabbi in France who had a light that didn't burn on oil a few hundred years ago. He was a Kabbalist. Was that an electric light? Don't know. Maybe. It's a good story. So let's look at this reason inside the text of here: reward and punishment in the world to come. So the first reason is, one of these is that the form of the soul, apart from the body, is unknown to us. We can't relate to the soul when it's separated from the body. Still less do we know what brings it to light in that state or causes it to suffer. Let's just discuss this for a moment. So somebody passes away. The moment somebody passes away, we don't know how to relate to them anymore. We feel a tremendous sense of loss and void and separation and abandonment and rejection because, they're not here anymore. So what do? We try to make a wake so that we can see them. Maybe we'll, amongst the Gentiles, the newest fashion craze is to make these really high-end funerals. If the guy likes to go on a motorbike, they'll bury him in a glass box on a motorbike, or playing the piano, or maybe smoking a cigar or playing golf or something. That's how they'll bury the guy. Standing propped up with all sorts of thingamajigs, as if we're kind of attributing physical properties and enjoyment to a soul that is no longer invested in a body. So we're trying to perpetuate the soul's existence in the body when the soul's gone already. It's out of here. And maybe it makes us feel good to see that, but that's not the Jewish way in death and mourning. What you're supposed to do is, the moment of death, you're supposed to switch from a physical relationship to a spiritual relationship, which is why many people that never came to shul will suddenly start coming to shul to say Kaddish 3 times a day. Many people in this forum connected to their shul, to our shul, only when somebody passed away in their lives, because they started to form a spiritual relationship with their parents and loved ones after they passed away. And that was a novelty. So at least they have the Torah to guide us about how we're supposed to mourn a loved one. But to know what they're experiencing, forget about it. That's totally out of our league. At least we know you're supposed to sit Shiva 7 days. You're supposed to 30 days of mourning, 12 months of mourning. You're supposed to say Kaddish for 11 months. You're supposed to light a Yortzei candle. You're supposed to do sort of things. At least we have some sort of a framework of how things that we can do to aid the spiritual elevation of the soul, sponsoring a Kiddush, giving tzedakah, that kind of stuff. But to know what they're experiencing, there's no way we can possibly relate. It's a little bit, in my analogy that would be, try to describe Beethoven, try to describe music to a deaf person. Try to describe color to a blind person. Just think about this for a moment. Describe the color red to a deaf person, to a blind person. You don't even know where to start. They're blind. You're like, it's hot. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start. That's the reason, friends, why the first of 7 reasons why the Torah doesn't tell us the reward of the world to come. God did, however, explain this to those who could understand its meaning. As he said to Joshua, I will let you walk among those who stand there. That's a reference to angels, by the way. Those who stand is angels. The reason when we daven the Amidah, the silent Amidah, we put our feet together as if to show that we have 1 foot. Because angels, where they are, is where they stay forever. They don't progress. Because they only have a good inclination. They never have to overcome any challenges. They have no freedom of choice. So where they are, how they created is where they stay. Humans are lower than the angels, but we have 2 feet. Because we compete, we have freedom of choice. animal soul, godly soul, evil inclination, good inclination, and therefore we can move, we can progress further. So we are called walkers, and they are called stationary beings. When God says, I will let you walk among those who stand there, that means I'll let you, Joshua, human being, freedom of choice, dwell amongst those who stay put, which is amongst the angels, right? Good. This was not to be while his soul was still joined to his body, but was an allusion to the state after death. When the soul in its simple and refined condition, divested of the body and no longer using it, assumes the form of angels. If it was purified and radiant, and its deeds were good in this world. And that's, friends, the first reason why the Torah does not tell us of spiritual reward at all. And now we're on to the second reason. Hopefully you're good with that reason, because I'm not hearing any critique, any comments. Let's see, comments coming in. Daniel is welcoming David and Sarah. Hi, David. Nice to see you. Welcome to Nevada Palm Beach Gardens, to our Torah study. Great to have you with us. And Michelle, welcome. Good. So that was the first reason that the Torah does not tell us the spiritual reward in the Torah, of the reward of the next world. By the way, I want to just quick thing I have to tell you is that the belief in the world to come is something which science itself supports. You know, when you realize the law of the conservation of energy, I think it's called the first law of thermodynamics or the third law of thermodynamics. I'm not sure which one. But the law of the conservation of energy is that energy is never lost. Energy doesn't just terminate. It just changes forms from dynamic to kinetic to electric to some other form of energy. Energy is never lost. It just switches forms. So to say that our lives suddenly terminate upon death is irrational. It actually is irrational. You have to say that it changes into another form, what we call a spiritual form. Right? And that's something which science itself supports. It's never created or lost. Thank you, Marty. That's what it means. Never created or lost. And therefore, science itself supports the concept of the law of the conservation of energy, that there is a world behind this world, after this world, right? But here's where the spiritual reward is shared with us. And that's the second explanation now, which is, was better to transmit it via the oral Torah. It was the oral Torah that tells us about the reward of the world to come. Remember, there's the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, which we received on Mount Sinai. Together with that written form was the oral Torah, which is the explanation of everything that's written in the written Torah, in the 5 books of Moses. That became known as the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Gemara, and the Medrash. And that all is the oral explanation of what's in the written Torah. And there we are given the reward in the spiritual world. Another reason is that the doctrine of the reward and punishment in the world to come was received by the common people from the prophets in the form of the oral tradition and was grasped by the wise through their intellectual faculties. Now, the reason for this is obvious. Why do we need an oral Torah? Why do we even need an oral Torah? Why couldn't God write everything down in the written Torah and we wouldn't have to struggle with this 3,000 years later about whether the oral Torah is really true or the oral Torah is made up by the rabbis? We wouldn't have to struggle. Why couldn't God put everything down in writing? The reason, my friends, is because you cannot explain everything in writing. Many subjects need context. If you were to describe how to run your business, if you had to disappear from this world tomorrow, God forbid, and you had to explain to your son how to take over your business, could you do everything in writing? Would that be possible to put everything in writing? I want you to think about that for a moment. Rob, I'm thinking of you and your clients, right? So you've got very nuanced and complex relationships with many, many people, right? A lot of things you can't put in writing. They're too nuanced. I wonder if you agree with me on this. You know, Marty, you were involved in international mergers and acquisitions and all sorts of political relationships that you brokered. Could you possibly put that all in writing and just give it to me, and now I'll be able to totally take over and fill your shoes? I don't think it's possible because, yes, there's a part of it you can put in writing, but then you need to be trained in. You need to see, observe, and listen and watch me to be able to understand how I operate, and I'm glad you agree with me, Marty, you need to be able to see the context of how to operate to be able to put things in the right perspective, right? You can't just say a one-size-fits-all. Client calls, you do A, B, C, and then you're done. Doesn't work like that. Depends. There's a million options here. And that's why you need an oral Torah to explain the context, what's not sayable, what's not writable in the written Torah. And that's exactly why the oral Torah is the one that tells us about the spiritual rewards of the world to come. Because it's too abstract to put in writing. How are you going to describe the spiritual rewards of the world to come in writing? You're going to say, it's again describing music to a deaf person. Can't. You need someone to sit there with you for 3 hours and describe to you what music might feel like, what it doesn't feel like, what sound is. And that's how you start to get a relationship with this business, right? That's the reason on-the-job training in the oral Torah, Andy, correct. That's the reason that the oral Torah is the one that teaches us the rewards of the world to come. So let's do that inside the text here. Another reason is that the doctrine of reward and punishment in the world to come was received by the common people from the prophets in the form of oral tradition and was grasped by the wise through their intellectual faculties. Here they were able to relate to it with questions and context and understanding and contrast and exclusions. They could relate. Sometimes you need a coach. Why do you need a rabbi? Why do I need to be here? Why couldn't you just take this book, read it, and then I'm just redundant. I'm completely unnecessary. Because you need someone to walk you through, like in a museum. You need a curator. You need someone to explain to you, this you're not ready for, this is good for you, you're already there, you're not there yet, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, this you're way off, this you're better than I could have imagined. You need someone that kind of customizes it for you. Just like you need me as a rabbi, so too you need you as a lawyer. You need a doctor. Why do you need a doctor? Maybe just read the book and heal yourself, right? No, you need someone to walk you through custom, to make it yours, to make you connected on a deep level. They therefore did not mention it in scriptures, just as they did not mention much of the exposition of the commandments and the duties of the mitzvahs, because they relied on the tradition. I think that's a pretty good reason as to why the Torah doesn't tell us about something which is essentially unrelatable to us. That's why it's not in the written Torah. That's why it's in the oral Torah. And that, my friends, is the second of 7 reasons why the reward of the world to come of Gan Eden of heaven is not explicitly written in the Torah. And with that, I'm going to conclude today's Gates of Trust, which is developing a whole new direction, as you can tell. We'll carry on Wednesday with this. Tomorrow is Day of Tanya, but today we'll carry on right now a few more minutes with the study of meditation and prayer. So we are studying the book, the prayer of the Shema Yisrael. Okay, just before I carry on, I see this comment. Even when you put something in writing and you think you covered everything, a year later something comes up that no one thought about, or the parties have a different view. That's why you need judges. Beautiful, Rob. Thank you. And I hope that you can understand why the oral Torah is so absolutely necessary, and why someone that comes to you and tells you that the oral Torah is merely made up by the rabbis is exhibiting a fundamental misunderstanding of how tradition can possibly be transmitted amongst humans and mortals, right? This is why God chose to give us the Torah in the form of a two formats, written and oral, so that we can, get the context all along the way. So we always have a teacher. By the way, it was the Romans. We just studied this with my kids on Shabbos. So beautiful. The Romans were the ones who understood this idea that the oral Torah was the essence of what is keeping Judaism alive. And in their efforts to uproot Judaism, here's what they did. They banned rabbinical ordination. They figured that if they cut the chain of tradition, today I'm a rabbi ordained all the way back to Moses, who got ordained by God in Mount Sinai, right? But if they could break that tradition, if they could make a generation or two where there were no rabbis, then the rabbis would never have been ordained anymore. Nobody would feel qualified to teach the masses, the people. And then we would have lost the power of the oral tradition, and Judaism would become an antiquated text, like a Rosetta Stone of sorts, that we can't really understand and we can't really relate to as a living, breathing, dynamic document. And that's what they were trying to do. It was Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, who was a very, who gave his life. He took 5 scholars, the 5 surviving students of Rabbi Akiva, to a mountain pass, a very narrow mountain pass. He put the 5 students behind him. He wedged himself in the mountain. He gave them semicha, rabbinic ordination, in violation of the Roman order, while the Romans were hot on his heels. And there he made sure that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai of Lag BaOmer, the author of the Zohar, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua, these 5 sages were the continuation of Judaism in the decimation that we experienced during the Roman era. The Romans were hot on his heels. They tried to catch these 5 rabbis to kill him, but they couldn't because he wedged himself in the mountain. They pierced his body with spears. His body was like a sieve by the time they were done piercing him, but the rabbis got away and Judaism survived. So this essentially, my friends, is what the Romans understood was held the key to the survival of Judaism, and I hope that you can understand why it's so important for us to be able to accept and study the oral Torah. By the way, I believe that on Sunday night, I'm going to be giving a special session to the Global JLI Jewish Learning Institute, the Global JLI platform. I'll be giving a short 15 or 20-minute class on the connection between Shavuos and the oral Torah, why we read the book of Ruth on Shavuos, and why the book of Ruth on Shavuos is so important, because it teaches us the essence of our connection, not only to the written Torah, which we received from God on Mount Sinai, but also to the oral Torah, which we received from God on Mount Sinai as well. So stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Susan, where can we learn more about the world to come? Is there a book you can recommend that writes about that? Stay tuned. Watch this space, Susan, because right here is where you're going to be learning more about the oral Torah, about the world to come, than you will be in many, many other books. That's what's so great about Duties of the Heart, the Gates of Trust. With that, folks, I'm going to switch over right now to our Hebrew reading course. Remember, Hebrew reading course, we're learning how to read, how to understand, and how to meditate all together as one in one course. If you missed any classes in this course, you can always review them on youtube.com/ it's actually jewishgardens.com/spiritual. If you go to jewishgardens.com/spiritual, there you will find the all the classes that we've given on meditation, prayer, and meditation and prayer. We've now done 29 words in our Hebrew word diary. So that now we're through 1/3 of the way to our goal of 100 words, because when you get 100 words, my friends, you will be proficient in Hebrew, proficient enough at least to be able to understand your prayers, mostly, to be able to converse in Israel. You will be in a totally different place. All I'm asking you to do is to make flashcards. Take the words that we're learning. We're learning typically 1 or 2 or 3 words each session, and take that words, write the Hebrew on the front, the English on the back, and go through those words on a regular basis, 5-10 times a day. And after a week or 2 or 3 weeks, you'll notice that those words are being engraved and burned in your memory. This is how I learned Yiddish, which was a language my parents only spoke between themselves. When I was 16, I realized that the Rebbe's classes were all taught in Yiddish, and I wanted to understand. So I started the Yiddish word on index cards, and I became proficient in no time. So that's what we're doing here as well. Pulling up my notes, and here we move on to the next part of the Shema, because we're learning the Shema, and what we're learning in the Shema is as follows. We learned, by the way, if you want to find the prayer book that we're learning right now, you can find the prayer book online. You can get your own prayer book at hebrewbooks.org/16091. If you go to hebrewbooks.org/16091, and you could just open the book, you read it online. I think there's a link to read it, and you then go to the page that we're looking at, right? So what page are we on right now? Let's see. It's basically an online version of the prayer book that I highly encourage you to buy. You can buy a copy from the Shul office. It's called Ashley here at the office, 561-624-2223. Or you can just whatever. It's a good book to have in your house. Every house should have a prayer book. Oh, you know what? I can find it over here. Sorry, much easier when I'm looking that way. If you just go to the Shema, you'll find it on page. I know Stacy has asked me about the book. Here, page 42. You'll find the Shema on page 42. It comes up many times in the prayer book. So again, JewishGardens.com. HebrewBooks.org. I'll post it in the comments here. Hi, Alina. Good morning. Welcome to our class here. I'm posting the link to our comments. Okay, good. That's where you'll find a prayer book. Okay, good. Now, where we're up to in this prayer book, we're up to the verse in the middle of page 42, which starts like this. You shall teach them thoroughly to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk in the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. So in the Hebrew, v'shinantam levanecha, and you shall teach them to your children. That's what we learned in our last lesson. Oops, one second, my notes. V'shinantam levanecha. Here. Okay, now the next word we have is v'dibarta. V'dibarta. I think we've learned this word before. We have learned this word before. I'll just give you a quick refresher. I don't want to waste time on words we've already learned because you can always watch them in the previous lessons. But just a quick review. The root of the word is daber. Starts with a daled. Dent in the back makes it a daled, as opposed to a rounded back, which makes it a resh. Here you got two very similar letters in the same word. Dalet and resh. If it's got a dent in the back, it's a dalet. If it's round in the back, it's a resh. And in the middle, you've got the letter bet. Bet, which is with a button, is a bet. Without a button, is a vet. If it's vacant, it's a vet. So dalet bet resh spells the word speak. This word means to speak. It also means a thing, because remember, your words become your reality. I had a 2-minute sermon on this a little while ago. You can find that. It's called Change Your Words. Sorry, Change Your Words, Change Your World. Change your words, change your world. And you will find that if you want to hear that 2-minute sermon, it's on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. How the power of our words actually changes our reality, which is why the word Daled Bet Resh is the same word for things, physical things, and speech, because our words change our reality. Who we are is a product of what we've been saying about ourselves. Very, very important. So that you'll find, just search that sermon in youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. The nice thing about this quarantine is that if you don't like what the rabbi's saying, you can just switch them off. And if I have too much of a noisy audience, I can just mute everybody. It's great. So if you missed the sermon, you can just hear it on YouTube. So that's a very, very powerful meditation about the power of our words. But I want to just expand to you this word a little bit more. In this context, it says v'dibarta. Remember, we learned that when you have a vav at the beginning of a word, so in this case, you have the root word, which is daled bet resh. But you have the vav at the beginning, the long, lanky vav at the beginning of a word typically means and. Vav at the beginning of the word means and. V'dibarta. I'm not getting into suffixes right now in this course yet. Suffixes we're going to do a little bit later. But right now, this is a word. It was actually word number 24 in our Hebrew word diary. So you should know that by now, hopefully. And that word, daled bet resh, means to speak or a thing. So v'dibarta means and you shall speak. But now, when I give a sermon, when a rabbi gives a sermon, it's called a dvar Torah. Torah, we know what Torah is. Torah is the Torah. It's the book of God. But what is a dvar Torah? D-V-A-R. What's a dvar Torah? Dvar is the same root, daled bet resh, as speaking, because this is delivered through speech. Dvar, in this case, you'll notice that the dibarta has a bet with the button, making it a bet. But it can switch very easily. That's why they're sister letters. Without the bet, without the button, becomes vacant to dvar Torah, which means a word of Torah. That's what it is. It's a word of Torah. Especially nowadays when rabbi sermons are limited, at least my sermons are limited to 2 minutes to compete with the millions of YouTube minutes that are out there. Got to give you 2 minutes of Torah study to be able to make sure that the message is passed on and sinks in, hopefully. Hope Mickey will allow me to continue back to my regular sermons after this is over. In any event, a few common expressions in Hebrew that relate to, in modern Hebrew, that relate to this word davar is when somebody tells you en davar, en davar, en davar. What does it mean, en davar? It means de nada in Spanish. Don't worry about it. De nada means for nothing. When you say thank you to somebody for doing something to you, they'll tell you de nada. It's not necessary. Thank you very much for nothing. It wasn't a big deal. In Hebrew, you'll say ein davar, which means ein means there isn't. En means not. It's a very interesting word, en. Actually, it can mean nothing as well, yeah. Very interesting word. We're going to have to get to that word eventually as well. But I'm not putting in a Hebrew word diary right now. It's Aleph Yud Nun, means nothing. It actually means not, like means nothing. Like when God creates something from nothing, it's yesh me'ayin, from nothing. So ein davar means it's no matter. It's no big deal. So if you want to be, incorporate a nice expression into your lexicon right now, you say ein davar. When somebody tells you toda rabah, every American knows toda rabah. It's as much as the Hebrew goes, right? Ani lo daber ivrit. Oh, by the way, that's very interesting. Every American knows, American Jew, he says ani lo daber ivrit, which means I don't speak Hebrew, right? Ivrit is ivrit, ani is I, lo means no, and daber is the one verb that every American seems to know. Ani lo daber ivrit. I don't speak Hebrew. Right here you see the word daber, speak. The word is speak. The root dalet bet resh is the same word as v'dibarta bam, and you shall speak of these words of the Shema, which is the origin of the biblical commandment to say Shema every morning and every evening. When you wake up in the morning, you have to verbalize these words before the end of the third hour of the day, and you have to say the Shema at night after dark. It is a biblical mitzvah to say the Shema, at least the first paragraph, every morning and every night. A beautiful, very, very important biblical mitzvah. It's literally like the Pledge of Allegiance to God, to monotheism. It's like saying Kaddish. It's more important than Kaddish, actually, but V'dibarta means to speak. And that's why you say, Ani lo daber ivrit, I don't speak Hebrew. What you're saying is the same exact root. And the fifth book of the Torah, by the way, is called the book of Devarim, which means the book of words, right? It's the book of these, that's actually things. It's actually words. No, these are the words that Moses spoke to the Jewish people on the last day of his life, right? That's the fifth book of the Torah. So you see, it's the same root that comes up everywhere. And I'm going to show you more places where it comes up. So Ani lo daber ivrit, where was I going with that? I was going to say, so in addition to saying to saying I don't speak Hebrew, your average American Jew also knows a few other basic words like toda, which means thank you, maybe bevakasha, which means please. But now I want you to incorporate one more word into your lexicon to say en davar. When someone tells you toda rabah, thank you for something you did for them, you can say to them en davar, no big deal. No big deal. It's nothing. It's not, the matter is nothing. Davar, the thing, is nothing. It was nothing. It's not a big effort. Don't worry about it. My pleasure. So in Italian, you'll say per piacere. It was my pleasure to help you. But in Hebrew, you'll say it was nothing. En davar, right? King Solomon says at the end of the book of is it Ecclesiastes? I think sof davar hakol nishma. At the end of the day, everything is understood. All that matters is that you fear God. Basically, that's what he says. I think it's end of Song of Songs. Sof davar means the end of the matter. Sof davar, the end of the matter. You'll say, by the way, another word is shum davar. Shum davar means nothing. Shum davar means nothing. Like, what did he tell you? Shum davar, nothing. Are you upset about something? Shum davar, nothing. Shum davar, not anything. Again, that word davar comes up all the time. This is word number 24 in our Hebrew word diary. Very, very, very important word. Dalet bet resh, which means both a thing and a word, right? Al mahu diber, about what did he speak, right? Dibarnu, we spoke, right? The Talmud actually gets into a very interesting discussion about a person who is accused of something, and his response, let's say he's accused, is brought to court that you owe me money. And the litigant might respond, Lo hayu dvarim me'olam. The matter never happened. Lo hayu dvarim me'olam. The matter never happened. Like you never lent me money. It's like a claim in court. So again, lo hayu dvarim, there were not matters ever. That's what it means. Me'olam. We actually learned the word olam also in our Hebrew word diary. So whatever, just you'll see. What I'm trying to show you is how frequent and how common is this word. I want to do two more words right now. The next word is bam. V'dibarta bam, and you shall speak of them. I'm not going to get into that word because it just means in them. I don't really see the root over here, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. But the next word is a nice word. Beshivtecha. Beshivtecha beveitecha, when you sit in your home. When you sit in your house. The word beshivtecha means when you sit in your home. Now, okay, lashevet. Lashevet means to sit. The real root over here is like this. The real root is the word yoshev. The yud, which is the smallest letter, it's like a Jew, the smallest nation in the world. We are the smallest nation in the world. We're called yuds, Yehudim, Jews. A Jew is a yud. That's the letter that represents the Jewish people because we're the smallest people. So the yud, the shin, remember she is always on the right. It's a sin to not listen to your wife. If it's on the left, that's a sin. If it's on the right, that's a shin, right? And then the third letter is the bet or the vet. It's really the vet without the button is vacant, right? Yoshev. When you have this word, a very, very important word, it's going to be word number 30 in our Hebrew word diary. Word number 30 is yoshev, which means sitting. This word comes up all the time. Yoshev, which means to sit. Now, sometimes in this root, the yud is such a humble letter that it sometimes just disappears altogether from the root. It's like a principle in Hebrew. When the root incorporates the yud at the beginning, sometimes the yud at the beginning will just drop. And you'll be left with these two words because it's such a little letter that nobody even notices it. It's like the Jewish people were so humble, nobody even knew that we existed, right? So the letter, this becomes the root in our word right now. Beshivtecha. So when a word starts with the letter bet, it's another preposition. Starting with a vav, it means and. But if the word starts with the letter bet, it means in. Be or when. In or when. Beshivtecha means when you sit. Now this root of sitting is a root that comes up all the time. For starters, you may remember the word. Well, yeshiva. What's a yeshiva? A yeshiva. I went to yeshiva. We studied in yeshiva. What does yeshiva mean? Yeshiva means to sit. It's a place where you sit, like we say in Yiddish, tochas af and tish. Right? You put the tochas on the table. I mean, you basically sit down and you study. There's no other way. You don't study through partying. You don't study through dancing. You don't study through whatever. You just got to sit and sweat it out. That's what the meaning of the word yeshiva is, right? College. I'm not sure what college actually means. I'm not sure what university means. But the word yeshiva means sitting because it tells us exactly what you're supposed to be doing there. You're old enough to be out of your spilkis, right? And you're old enough to just sit down and understand and learn. That's what yeshiva means, to sit. It's a place of sitting as opposed to a place of partying, which is what the American culture is not really getting when they go to college. Now, this is also, there's a famous nursery rhyme. It goes, how's it go? Lashevet lakum. Oh, no. It's a kind of like ring around a rosy. Ring around a rosy, but the Hebrew version is uga uga uga. Lashevet lakum. Whatever. The part of the nursery rhyme is lashevet. You sit and you stand. Lashevet lakum. Lashevet velakum, to sit and to stand. So lashevet means to sit. You'll find this word coming up all the time in our culture. The word is yud shin vet, right? Again, yud shin vet. This is the root word number 30 in our Hebrew word diary, and where you can drop the yud. It very easily drops because it's just a yud. You can't drop other letters, but you can drop the yud. And now when you put this together, the shin and the vet, what happens is that you get yeshiva, which means the place of study. You also get the word teshuva, repentance. On Yom Kippur, we repent. Every day we repent. What does it mean to repent? The word repentance is a mistranslation. I've said this a million times. Repentance implies that I'm in a bad place and I've got to go to a new place, which is good. The real translation of the word teshuva means to return to my default position. Because originally we are created by default, we are good, and we pervert the goodness which is created within us to become evil. This is the theme of what we're going to be learning tomorrow in our Tanya class, Tanya chapter 29. We're going to learn about the essence of the evil inclination, the essence of the sitra achra, the essence of the klipa, and how you can vanquish it by understanding its essence. So the word teshuva means to return to your core goodness, and that is the meaning of the word teshuva, which means to sit, to return to your default position. The root is teshuva. The root of that is the shin and the vet, which is to return, to go back. Just like a sitting position is your most relaxed position as opposed to standing or hanging, you're sitting, which is relaxed default position. So to teshuva means to return to your default position. Helps us tremendously shift our mindset when we think about when Yom Kippur is coming. Do I need to become something that I'm not, or do I need to return to my organic essence? A lot of people are very afraid of rabbis because the rabbi is going to change my life. And maybe the rabbi is going to take me out of my comfort zones, and I'm not comfortable with all this, right? But my job as the Chabad rabbi is to explain to people, I'm not here to change you. My goal is to nurture your organic connection to your own spirituality, to bring you to a state of your own essential happiness. That's my goal. I'm not trying to bring you to a new religion, a new philosophy, a new understanding. I'm bringing you to the faith of your fathers. I'm bringing you face to face with your own soul. That is my job as a Chabad rabbi. It's about teshuva, returning to our essence. And that's the connection here. Also, it's very interesting is there's a mitzvah in the Torah of hashavat avidah, a mitzvah of returning a lost object. Avidah means lost. Hashava means to return a lost object. Guess what the root of hashavat avidah is? The root of hashavat avidah is shav, lashevet. This word, shav, is to sit a lost object. What does it mean to sit a lost object? To bring it home. That's the mitzvah of returning lost objects. It's bringing it back to a state of sitting, to a state of rest, to where it started from, right? By the way, what's a chairman in Hebrew? A chairman, interesting word in English, chairman, the man who sits on the chair, as if to imply in English that a chairman is a man who's sitting somehow, right? I wonder why that is. I wonder if any of our business people here, businesswomen and businessmen might help me. What is the origin of the word chairman? Why is chairman associated with sitting? Because in Hebrew, it's called a yoshev rosh. Yoshev, sitting, head. He sits at the head. Yoshev rosh. He sits at the head. He's the chairman. She's the chairwoman, whatever, right? Yoshevet rosh. So it's associated with sitting because I guess if you're in a leadership position, you're fully comfortable. You're not trying to impress anybody else. You're not trying to garner anybody else's support. You are in a state of comfort. You're in a state of relaxation. You're in a position of power. Everybody else is around you, not that you're pandering to them. That's the meaning of the word chairman in Hebrew. When you're in a state of sitting, you're the head of the sitters, right? That's why it's called a chairman. What else? There's a few more words I want to describe to you over here. Oh, what's a village in Hebrew called? How do you say village in Israel? What's a village? A village is a moshav. By the way, a chair is called a moshav as well. When you sit, it's called a moshav. Now you know why it's called a chair, why it's called a moshav. So in Hebrew, C-H-A-I, in English, C-H-A-I-R is just social consensus to mean something you sit on. But in Hebrew, the word for return, for teshuvah, the word for place of study, and the word for sitting is all the same word because it means to sit when you're relaxed, when you're in a state of calm. So that's why when you build a village, this is building homes. This is where we live. This is where we're relaxed. It's called a moshav, a village. It's called a moshav, as opposed to a kibbutz. You know what the difference in a kibbutz and a moshav is? The kibbutz is a unique worker-controlled agricultural production cooperative. It's like a communist. It's a communist entity. A moshav is a service corporation in which the members are the individual farmers which reside within the settlement. So I believe that the difference between a moshav and a kibbutz, that a kibbutz is like there's no ownership. Everything is owned by the collective. It's truly a communist entity. Whereas a moshav is that you just live there, but you own your own things. So it's more of a capitalist environment. Maybe that explains why it's more moshav, because in a communist existence, it's very difficult to be relaxed. I don't know if anybody was ever happy in a communist society. Like Winston Churchill said, that whilst capitalism might be the unequal distribution of happiness, communism is the unequal distribution of misery. Communism is the equal distribution of misery, and capitalism is the unequal distribution of happiness. So that's probably why it's called a moshav in a capitalist society, where a moshav is where you can live, relax, each person and minding his own business, and you own what you own, and you don't have to worry about somebody else taking away or telling you what you're allowed to have and what you're not allowed to have. I wonder if an HOA is considered a kibbutz or a moshav. You know, when they tell you how you're allowed to grow your stuff, what car you're allowed to have parked in your driveway. I wonder if that has elements of a kibbutz. But we spoke. Oh, by the way, so what is the answer to a question called? How do you say an answer to a question in Hebrew? An answer to a question is called a teshuvah. A teshuvah, again, the same root, shinvet. We drop the yod from the root of yoshev, and it becomes shinvet, which means to sit. When you have a question, you're in a state of unrest. You're challenging and questioning your understanding entirely. But when you have a teshuvah, now I'm relaxed. Makes sense. Everything rests. That's why an answer is called a teshuvah, a response, an answer, because it puts everything to rest. Whereas a question fires up a storm. A teshuvah, an answer, puts everything to rest. Everything falls into place like a jigsaw puzzle. I got to tell you, when you study the Rebbe's works, like the Rebbe will take a Rashi on Torah. He'll ask 17 questions on it and rip the Rashi to shreds. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like horrible. What's going on over here? It's like embarrassing what the Rebbe's done to the Rashi. It makes so many questions. It's like Rashi doesn't make any sense. And then the Rebbe gives 1 point, one like chiropractic adjustment, and everything falls into place in the most magnificent, beautiful way. Everything suddenly makes sense. That's a teshuvah. That's an answer. Where everything rests, everything falls into place. Shabbat, guess what the root of the word Shabbat is? You got it. Shabbat is the same word as Yoshev, just with an end of a taf, which is a suffix. I'm not worrying about the suffix right now. But the root of the word Shabbat is shav, to sit, because it's a day of rest. That's what's so important about this word in our Hebrew word diary, word number 30. What's so important about it is that it is a day of sitting. It is a day of rest. You're not climbing mountains. You're not flying airplanes. You're not helicopter skiing. You're not going anywhere. You're not flying. You're not nothing. You just relaxed. Sitting. Peaceful. That's why it's called Shabbat. And when you settle a case, when you settle a court case, it's called liyashev. Liyashev, to settle a deal, like to make a compromise. Liyashev, when everybody's fighting and they come to a compromise, it's called liyashev, to come to a compromise. All the same root, my friends, of yud, shin, vet, which is word number 30, a very, very beautiful word of our Hebrew word diary today, which is to sit, as in a yeshiva, where you study. Repentance, which doesn't mean repentance, actually means return to a state of your original state of being, to return a lost object. A chairman who sits at the head, but he sits. By the way, when you're sitting shiva, you know how you say somebody is sitting shiva? Let's see if you can work this one out on your own. How do you sit shiva in Hebrew? Yoshev shiva. You sit shiva. Yoshev, like this word. Yoshev, you sitting shiva. Hu yoshev shiva, he yoshevet shiva. They were sitting shiva, right? We spoke about a village in Israel, which is called a moshav. Shabbat is the same root, Shabbat, because it's a day of rest. Teshuva is an answer to a question, puts a question to rest, and liyashev is to settle the case. A beautiful word, friends. I'm going to sign out of it here. Shin Bet is Israeli Intelligence Service. Nope. Sorry, Elaine. No connection here because Shin Bet is actually an acronym for something else. It's like the CIA or the FBI. It's an acronym for something. I forget exactly what it was an acronym for, but it's not a word as in Shin Bet, which means a word, a root. It's like saying that CIA is related to the word CIA. It's not a word, it's an acronym. So sorry, there's no connection there, Elaine. But nice try though. And that's it. So now that's the word that we left with of when you sit, and we're going to carry on the next one, God willing, on Wednesday with our Hebrew word diary. So thank you for joining me here this morning, everybody. Don't forget Corey's class today, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11:30, jewishgardens.com/Zoom, a class in Tehillim, understanding the Tehillim, the Psalms of King David, and reading them. Don't forget, King David's yahrzeit and birthday is on Shavuos, which is next Shabbos, the festival of Shavuos. So a very opportune time to learn about King David and his teachings and his writings is today with Corey at 11:30 at jewishgardens.com/Zoom. Don't forget tonight, we have a very special event. I forgot to mention, very special event tonight is with Chana Weisberg and her husband, Rabbi Isser Zalman Weisberg, two veteran philosophers and orators talking about learning to like the people that you love. Right? That's going to be a beautiful, beautiful Zoom event. It's only on Zoom tonight. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom. Don't forget to join us at 8 o'clock. It's going to be a 1-hour event just as part of our Scholar in Residence series during this quarantine. And we hope that you'll join us. We don't yet have a sponsor for that. If anybody would like to do so, please let us know at jewishgardens.com/donate or by calling the office 561-624-2223. Again, a special thank you to Keith Kleinick for dedicating today's Torah study together with Mickey Gottlieb. Keith is dedicating it in honor of his son, Samuel Harris Kleinick, on his graduation from Georgetown at McDonough School of Business, and by Mickey and Cookie in honor of their grandson, Harrison, for his graduation from high school and Mickey's 75th birthday. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Over and out. Shalom.